Behind the glittering skylines of Shanghai and Shenzhen lies the largest debt bubble in human history. For decades, China looked unstoppable. Cities rose from farmland in months. Factories powered the entire planet. Millions were lifted out of poverty. But in 2026, the machine that created the miracle has turned against itself. China is no longer hitting a slowdown. It is hitting a structural wall. A wall made of 20 million unfinished apartments, a shrinking workforce, and a generation of graduates who have given up on the future. We are witnessing the moment the world's factory starts running out of steam. This isn't just about GDP numbers or trade deals. It is about the collapse of a social contract that held 1/5 of humanity together. Stay until the end, because the collapse of the Chinese dream won't stay inside China. It's coming for the global economy, from the price of your electronics to the stability of the global banking system. The final stage is something almost nobody is prepared for, and it starts with a silence in the streets that used to roar with construction. For decades, the world watched China as if it were an unstoppable force of nature. It felt like every year, a new megacity appeared out of nowhere. We saw the high-speed trains, the sprawling factories, and the sheer scale of a nation that seemed to have figured out the secret to infinite growth. The skyline became the ultimate symbol of this miracle. Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, cities that look like they belong in the next century. But underneath this spectacular speed, the foundation was built on a dangerous, debt-fueled gamble. You see, China's growth wasn't just fueled by exports. It was driven by a relentless, almost obsessive need to build things, whether they were needed or not. Real estate became the beating heart of the economy, eventually accounting for nearly 30% of China's entire GDP. To put that in perspective, that is double the size of the housing sector in most Western nations. It wasn't just about providing homes, it was about moving money and creating the illusion of wealth. For the average Chinese family, property wasn't just a place to live, it was their only safe investment. In a country where the stock market is volatile and bank interest is low, people poured 3 generations of savings into apartments. Often, they bought these apartments in pre-sale ceremonies before a single brick was even laid. They bought into the promise that prices would rise forever. But in 2026, that confidence has shattered. We are now seeing the era of the rotten tail buildings. Across the country, from the outskirts of Beijing to the industrial zones of the south, there are over 20 million unfinished apartments. People are trapped. They are still paying mortgages on concrete skeletons that have no windows, no plumbing, and no future. Construction cranes stand frozen against the sky, rusting in the rain. Imagine giving your life savings to a developer, only to watch the company collapse while you are forced to live in a rented room nearby, still paying for a ghost home. This is the human cost of the debt bubble. When 70% of a nation's household wealth is trapped in crumbling concrete that may never be finished, the wealth effect disappears instantly. People stop spending. They stop going to restaurants. They stop buying cars. They start surviving. This economic pain has birthed a silent revolution among the youth. They call it tangping, or lying flat. After years of brutal competition in the education system, often described as the Gaokao pressure cooker, young graduates are entering a job market that simply doesn't want them. The 996 culture, working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, used to be a badge of honor for the tech giants of Hangzhou and Shenzhen. Now it feels like a death sentence for a salary that can't even cover the interest on a small loan. Millions of highly educated young people are simply opting out. They are doing the bare minimum to survive, refusing to marry, refusing to buy homes, and refusing to fuel the system that exhausted them. There is a deeper, even darker term now. Let it rot. It is a feeling of total resignation. This is a nightmare for the Communist Party. A superpower needs an energetic, consuming middle class to grow. Instead, China has a generation that is quietly checking out. This psychological shift is happening just as the country hits a demographic cliff. Thanks to the decades-long one-child policy, China is now aging faster than any society in history. The working-age population is shrinking by millions every year. In 2026, the data is undeniable. The world's factory is running out of young, cheap workers. This means labor costs are rising, and the global supply chain is shifting. Factories that spent 30 years in the Pearl River Delta are quietly moving to Vietnam, India, and Mexico. The government is trying to pivot to what they call high-quality growth, things like electric vehicles, green energy, and advanced chips. But you cannot replace a massive real estate sector that supported millions of construction jobs with car batteries and solar panels overnight. The math simply does not work. To make matters worse, the local governments that built the miracle are now drowning in debt. For years, these provinces and cities funded their budgets by selling land to developers. It was a perfect circle. The government sold land, the developers built apartments, and the people bought them with debt. But now that the developers are broke, the land sales have stopped. This has left a $9 trillion hole in local finances. We are seeing the consequences in real time. In many cities, civil servants, the very people who run the state, are seeing their pay cut or delayed. Streetlights are being turned off to save electricity. Bus routes are being canceled. The high-tech infrastructure that once looked so modern is starting to show the cracks of neglect. This is the lioning effect, where even the most industrial regions find themselves unable to pay for the basic maintenance of their own success. This is why China's crisis is so dangerous for you, regardless of where you live. For 20 years, the world economy relied on a China that bought everything: German cars, American technology, Australian iron ore, and African minerals. But a China that is focused on internal survival is a China that stops buying from the world. If the Chinese consumer stays home and keeps their money under the mattress out of fear, global growth stalls. We are entering an era of global deflation exported from China. The world's second largest economy is trying to export its way out of this crisis by flooding the world with cheap, subsidized goods. This is leading to massive trade wars, new tariffs, and shuttered factories in Europe and North America. The tragedy of the Chinese miracle is that it was built on the assumption that tomorrow would always be bigger than today. It was a system that required constant 8% growth just to keep the debt from exploding. But the mathematics of aging and the reality of a housing bubble have finally caught up. The skyscrapers still stand, and the surveillance cameras, over 600 million of them, still watch every street corner. But cameras cannot create economic growth. They cannot force a generation to have children or believe in a dream that has become too expensive to afford. A country can build 1,000 cities, but it cannot manufacture hope once it has been lost. As we look at the hollowed-out developers and the quiet frustration of the youth in 2026, the question is no longer when China will surpass the United States. The question is how the world handles a wounded giant that is no longer growing. The transition from the Chinese miracle to the Chinese stagnation will be the most defining economic event of our decade. The neon lights of Shanghai are still bright, but they are shining on a miracle that has already reached its end. The factory is still running, but the soul of the machine has changed. We are witnessing the end of an era, and the vibrations are just beginning to reach the rest of the world.